from all over the continent. Those of you in Accra, Zimbabwe, Togo, all over the continent, we want to welcome you to this afternoon's very interesting discussion, where we are looking at the issue to do with the young people of our continent. And we're asking, are we going to have them as assets for development, or we are going to have them as security threat in the coming years? That is the discussion that we are going to be having today. And we are privileged to have very distinguished panelists that are accomplished in their own way. Some of them have been in the development space for decades. And today we want to discuss this matter. Would we see our young people as assets for development in the next decade, or security threat? That is the subject for discussion. And I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves. But before we do that, I just want us to know that this program, it's meant to help all of us to find credible ways and means of shaping the future of Africa as far as the Agenda 23 is concerned. So stay tuned, and in a while I'm coming back and I'll ask my panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll take it from there. But I don't know where the sound is. Welcome. Okay. Copy. Yeah. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So today, this afternoon, right here on Channel 63 in the Africa Future Leaders Institute of Global Affairs studios, we are privileged again, like I said, to have this program. And the first on the list to be introduced is my good friend, the UNDP resident representative all the way in Zimbabwe, Dr. Ayodele Odusola. Doc, I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, Doc.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's so exciting to have you on this program, and I know we're going to have a good time. We're going to really have a good time. So please, Doc, just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what have you done, and where are you currently?
Yeah,
Recording in progress.
My name is Ayodele Odusola. I'm the UNDP resident representative for Zimbabwe, and also the previous resident representative for South Africa. I was there between 2019 and 2023 as the resident representative for UNDP South Africa, and also for some time acting as the resident coordinator. I was also the director for African Sustainable Finance Hub, located in Pretoria. But before then, I used to be the chief economist for United Nations Development Program for Africa for about a period of about 10 years. And before then, I was development advisor also for Africa, and also for the United Nations Development Program. But I have done a lot of things in the area of development, particularly when it comes to the issue of youth empowerment and development. But essentially, I used to be a policymaker within the government of my country. And before then, I was a university professor. So it's really a pleasure to have you today again in this particular panel, and also the other panelists. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me go all the way to South Africa and ask my very good friend, Tiekie Barnard, the CEO of Africa Shared Value Initiative. Tiekie, I know you can hear me. Please do introduce yourself for us. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. And hello, Doc. I hope you're well.
I'm doing well, very well. Thank you.
Yeah. My name is Tiekie Barnard, and I'm the CEO of Shared Value Africa. We an organization that, first of all, I have to mention that I'm an African activist. I'm also a gender equality activist. And we're an organization that work across the continent. And we've got country chapters in Nigeria, Kenya. We launch in Ghana on the 3rd of October and Malawi on the 28th of November. So just quickly, our work focus on entrepreneurs. So for us, it's about empowering our entrepreneurs and helping them to build sustainable businesses from using the concept of creating shared value and value creation for all. That's the one part of our work. The second part is empowering women. And that's where the gender equality side comes in. And the third part is leadership, trying to shift those leadership mindsets to actually support the youth and women. Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel, for being here and for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Tiekie, my very good friend, and I'm so proud to have you on this program. Let me go all the way to Canada and to introduce my other good friend, who is also the chairperson of the Governing Council of Africa, Dr. Joseph Attah-Mensah. Joe, I know you can hear me. Wonderful. Joe, just tell us a bit about yourself and how cold is Canada now?
Oh, Canada's not cold. It's not cold. It's warm now.
All right, good.
It's getting cooler. Anyway, thanks for the invitation to be on this program. It's a really an honor and a privilege to be invited to be here. Let me recognize the panelists who are going to be joining us to speak on this topic. Dr. Odusola and Madam Barnard. It's a really an honor to share this platform with you. With Ayo, I've known him for quite a century, so I don't, and he's a great guy, a very intelligent guy, very not necessarily his intelligence that is given, but his humility and his friendship and his kindness always touches me and inspires me a lot. So I kind of could say that he's like a mentor. In that sense, what am I doing now? I am unemployed. I've retired from the UN Economic Commission for Africa, where I was there for quite some time, and collaborated with Dr. Odusola and his team on a number of fronts. Before going to the ECA in 2004, I was for about 11 years with the Bank of Canada as a senior economist there. So what I think is most interesting is that what I've benefited from working with people like Odusola and others is, the issue of how do we move the agenda of Africa's development, and that is what I did for the almost 20 years with the UNACA, working on issues of regional integration, issues of macroeconomic stability, a bit on governance, and I am happy to share my thoughts. Generally, now I'm just at home, and I read a bit and I write a bit, and so I continue to, although I don't have any well, how do I put it? I'm not employed. I continue to do research on these issues that are pertinent for our continent. So thank you, Dr. Daytumi, for inviting me to be here. And I'm ready to share my thoughts with you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, panelists. So it's a delight to have all of you today on this planet. Sorry, on this platform for us to be discussing this very, very important topic. Now, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to come around to all of you for your initial comment on the topic: Africa's youth in the next decade. Are they going to be catalysts for development or security threat? So I'm going to start with Tiekie. Just give us your initial comment very briefly, and then we'll go into the details. Then for our guests who are joining and are listening from all over the continent and beyond the continent, please, you can start sending in your comments, your text messages, or your questions in the chat platform. We'll read them out for the panelists to respond to them. So let me come to you, Tiekie. I've known you for some time now, and I know that you're very passionate about young people, about women, about gender issues, and all of that. Tell us what you think about the topic. Would Africa's youth in the next decade, would they be a catalyst for development or a security threat from your standpoint?
So for me, the answer is clear. Young people are the greatest catalyst we have. They are already showing resilience in uncertainty, creativity, in scarcity, and leadership in innovation. The real threat for me, Doc, lies not in our youth, but in us failing to invest in them. So we are the youngest continent on earth, with 70% of our people under the age of 30. And at a time when other regions are aging and shrinking, Africa holds the energy, the ideas, and the drive to fuel not just our own future, but the world's. And I honestly, for me, sitting here today and I'm privileged to be here with my fellow speakers as well, is that for me, there is absolutely no doubt that the answer is clear. Our young people are the greatest catalyst we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiekie. Thank you so much. Let me go all the way to Toronto again. Joe, you just came out of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Where you sit, how do you see the future as far as the next decade is concerned with respect to our young people?
Great question. I think that it depends on how governments see the youth. But in my opinion, I think the youth are a tremendous asset to our development. And therefore, it behoves on governments to do whatever it can to harness the power of the youth. And I would say that in 3 areas that I would suggest, or maybe 4 areas that would help. I would say, to begin with, we all know that the youth, Africa is a young continent because it has more youth than the old. And so for us to benefit from this demographic dividends, I would say that we may want to look into our education system again. That perhaps maybe the education system is such that we get titles, but we don't get employment. And so we need to reform our education system in a way that it is students come out and are ready for the job market, because at times there's that mismatch between the skills that are acquired in university and the skills that are needed in the job market. And so in this regard, I think we should pay more emphasis on technical, vocational education. It's important. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Can you see me also?
We
Okay.
can see you.
Okay. So I think it's important for us to look into the job, into the education, the reform to match our skills. The second thing that I think I would also suggest is that students, which I think you've been a champion on, Emmanuel, is the question of entrepreneurship to prepare us. And then therefore we are not in a situation where that our minds are saying that we're going to get out of the university and get somebody to employ us. But we should also be in a position that the youth will come out, that they would be themselves, have the ability to create the jobs. And therefore, in that sense, priority must be given to the youth in terms of incentives and all that. That would help for them to have businesses that would flourish. The third thing that I want to put on the table is also the question of governance, the issue of corruption, the issue of, you've got to know somebody in order to get an employment. Meritocracy should be the order of the day. So I think it's important that we also look into the whole governance structure, because if we do not have a proper governance structure, I don't think the youth will be able to flourish and we can harness its full potential. And the last thing is that whatever we do, it has to be inclusive. We cannot have a situation where we have women and we don't employ them. We have to have a gender inclusive policy that would allow everyone to be part of this system. So in the short, I would say that, we would have to look at the youth as a gift to Africa, or perhaps look at it as a check, a blank check, not a blank check, a check, which is an asset, and we have to harness it. Otherwise, if we don't, then this cash, which we have to get out of the youth, might be turned into another way in terms of being a threat to the security of the country. But in my opinion, I think the youth is now. We need to support them now. Let's not say that they are future leaders. If you look at leadership, you can see that we're now independence in.
Today, the median age of most parliamentarians all over the continent is about 35. So if we are saying governance, and it's the same people who are in charge, why is governance also becoming an issue for us now? But we'll interrogate that later. Let me go to Zimbabwe and engage my good friend, Dr. Ayo. Dr. Ayo, you've been in this space for decades, especially in the development sector. And when I came to your office and we started talking, and your view even about the agriculture and how Africa can transform agriculture to become a major key game changer was fascinating. But tell us, from where you sit, how do you see the future as far as 10 years is concerned, as far as our young people, in this case, we're looking at the young people?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel, and thanks to my co-panelist, Dr. Joe Attah-Mensah, as well as Mrs. Tiekie Barnard. I think they have really touched on the pertinent things that we need to focus more attention on. As they have rightly said, our youth are our major assets, and they are supposed to be the catalyst of development. I see the lack of development most African countries face today as the inability to explore the potential of our youth. Not only the agility, innovation, but also in terms of the ideas and productiveness that we're losing by not taking adequate care of our youth. Essentially, to me, I see them as critical assets and binding constraints to development in Africa if they are not fully explored. And what I mean, in terms of shaping the future of development in Africa, and how do we ensure we turn table around in terms of making sure our youth becomes the bedrock and the engine of growth and development. One, the first thing we need to do is for us to completely overhaul our educational system. We need to really do away with focus more on certification rather than the skill content of our educational system. And in this regard, I want to say that not everybody should have the capacity to go to the tertiary institutions. In the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, our vocational training institutions that are supposed to handle those that may not be able to, perhaps because of financial constraints, because of intellectual capability, that are unable to move to higher or tertiary institutions, need to be taught serious traits and skills for them to be on their own. Because what most of our youth believe is the employability issue. But the ability for them to be able to really employ themselves or be self-employed or be entrepreneurs are something we have to probably look into, because our educational system as it is today is generating employability, not the kind of entrepreneurs that we need to shape the future of development in Africa. And also, we need to ensure that for most of our undergraduates in the polytechnic and universities, they must be exposed to what entrepreneurship is, everybody, so that when you graduate, you don't look for a job. You start as employing yourself and then become employers of labor. And I think that's the first thing which I would need to focus more attention on. The second one relates for the government to ensure that we have youth-sensitive policies. You cannot be talking about any development policy across any sector, whether in the area of agriculture, in the area of industry, in the area of mining, in the area of banking and finance, and a lot of other things, without making sure that we leverage the capacity of the youth. We involve them in terms of what do they really need? How do they drive development? And also, we ensure that the core of it, as rightly said by the previous speakers, we need to make sure they are the core of our policymaking process. And also, I think all African countries must be thinking about the future of work, the kind of skills of tomorrow that we need to shape the world. And we have seen that this is not limited to advanced countries, because if you look at the unicorns, those startups that have an asset of over $1 billion today, most of them are headed by youth. And this is a matter of opportunity. So what we need to do is, can we ensure that all our youth are exposed to what they call the skill of the future? I see no reason from secondary schools up to universities why we shouldn't be exposing our students to the artificial intelligence, the issue of data science, the issue relating to what they call robotics, blockchain technology, and the like, Internet of Things. These are the kind of program skill that is required for us to shape the world. And if we are able to do this, I strongly believe our youth will become not only as assets, but also they will become the drivers of growth and development in Africa. And also, we need to invest heavily across all our youth, so that any youth that leaves the country, then they do not only contribute to where they are, but also they contribute to the countries they have left behind. So in terms of being an asset, not only to Africa, but to the entire world. So that's the way I see it. We strongly need something to really change the kind of skill we expose our youth to, and how we invest in them to become assets rather than to become a security threat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayo. I mean, all of you have raised very interesting subject matters that I think that we need to look. I am in Ghana at the moment, and the youth thing we are talking about is not only about those that are coming from our schools, but also those who are already on the street. Now, currently, most graduates all over the continent have become Uber drivers or Bolt drivers and things of that nature. Critical minds that could benefit the continent in the next decade find themselves in, employment situations that really, that's not what they were trained for. So education is critical. And all of you have underscored the need for us to overhaul our educational policies and the rest. But my question is, Dr. Ayo, I'll start with you. What are the practical ways that this overhauling of our educational system can be done? Must we leave it only to governments? Or is there other innovative ways that this thing can be done? Now, I'm sure you know, being in the development space, that most of our educational budgets all over the continent depend on donors. How then do we transform our educational policies and what have you to ensure that the kind of future skills that you are talking about can be attained? So let me start with you, Dr. Ayo.
Thank you very much, Doc. I think you've raised something quite pertinent. First, we need a fit-for-purpose educational system. And for us to have a fit-for-purpose educational system, it is something that goes beyond the capacity of the government. In fact, the government is supposed to be a monitoring mechanism in this regard. The private sector needs to play a very strong role. First, what we teach in school must be driven by national, continental, and global needs. We do not just teach anything based on theoretical exposition of our universities or tertiary institutions. What are we graduating students for? Is it the ability to deal with issues that confront our countries in terms of technology, in terms of transformation of the various sectors we are thinking about? That's the first thing. The second thing is the need for us to ensure that there is strong partnership between our academic institution and the industry, particularly the private sector, where we ensure that now students are expected to go through what we call a kind of mentorship program like internship in private sector, in companies, and even in several organizations where they get used to what it takes to be in a non-academic environment. And that's one thing which I think it's really very important. So strategic partnership with between the academic institutions and the industry, so that they know exactly what it takes. What would they be teaching the students in schools? They must teach them what the labor market reality is demanding. That's the second one. The third one relates to the issue of ensuring that we really focus attention on the critical bottlenecks of development. We realize that most things we teach in universities these days, they are not focused on issue of science, technology, and innovation. This is something that we thought is really very important for us to really ensure that this is really addressed. Now, there are a number of misgivings and myths relating to the issue of youth capacitation. We need to capacitate our youth, and the way we want to capacitate them must not be treated as homogeneous. There are some youth, if you look at our youth, there are about 3 different categories. Just about 10% of them can become entrepreneurs. And if you train everybody to be entrepreneurs, we are wasting on almost about 90% of assets. We were able to really identify those that can become entrepreneurs and expose them to nitty-gritty, because what they need is the access to opportunities. There are about 40 to 45% that really want to really employ themselves. And in this regard, we need to give them what we call the technical and the soft skill to be able to do this. So this is where the issue of vocational training becomes very important, because not everybody can become entrepreneur. Now, the third category of our youth are those that say, oh, yes, I don't want to become entrepreneur and I don't want to really employ myself, but I just need employability skills. What do I need in the labor market for me to be able to do this? And these are the people we need to send in terms of mentorship, internship, even volunteer mechanism we need to introduce in Africa, where people just get to know what it takes in terms of labor market reality. We need to expose them. That's the practical reality we need to do. And this is one of the reasons why we say, hey, we need to really ensure that we continue to capacitate our youth to be able to stand on their own, so that they become employers of labor rather than become an employee or looking for a job where there's no job. Now, the idea of making sure that our youth are really focusing on being employed by government is gone. And for us to really make sure that even when we overhaul our educational system, but if there is no growth in the society, we're just going back to square one. So our governments need to really ensure that the ease of doing business becomes very critical, so that it accelerates the growth of the private sector. And it can support what we call support system for startups in terms of access to information, access to finance, access to market, and access to what it calls skills in terms of financial and digital literacy. These are things which I consider to be very important in making sure we put pragmatism into capacitating our youth, so that we turn them from being a security threat to asset and catalyst to growth and development in Africa.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Dr. Ayo, you've raised some very interesting issues to do with the private sector and jobs and internships, entrepreneurship, and all of that. Now, Tiekie, you are a practitioner. I've known you to be in the private space for some time, and you even have programs that promotes, purpose-driven profit and all of that. Now, here you have, I don't know the statistics at the moment. I haven't looked at it, but I know that at least across the continent, millions of graduates come out every year. And yet, if you juxtapose that with the number of jobs that are created, it doesn't match. Even by the private sector, it doesn't match. And that is because the private sector is really not growing, it's not expanding, for reasons that are known to all of us, in terms of taxation, in terms of bureaucracies, in terms of, red tapes, and all of that. So, Tiekie, the question I'm asking is, if indeed the private sector must support the development of our youth into capacitating them to become assets for development, how do we ensure that practically from where you sit, that process, that idea can become a reality?
Dr. Emmanuel, I just quickly want to step back into the educational side that Ayo was talking about now. And I just want to say to everybody on the call here today, the World Economic Forum reminds us that 40% of today's skills will be disrupted by 2030. And even the most highly educated roles will be reshaped by artificial intelligence. So what does that mean in our world? It means that the edge no longer belongs to degrees and those list of credentials that you have, because that's not the skills that we're going to need in the future. The edge belongs to adaptability, to resilience, to creativity, qualities that our young people live and breathe by every day. The World Economic Forum has done a world of work, and the top 10 skills, if you just have to look at them, each one of our entrepreneurs, actually, if I think about the entrepreneurs that we work with, creative thinking. If you're an entrepreneur starting a business, creative thinking is your first, the first step into your business. And then the resilience, the flexibility, and the agility is also a skill that we're looking for. And I have to so much agree with what Yayo was saying about vocational training. And stepping into the private sector, Dr. Emmanuel, if you think about, and we've had discussions with private sector organizations, vocational training is something that we need to get right on the Africa continent, because the industries are looking for people that can come out of their training program and walk straight into a job, because we're never going to actually, get the almost want to say the economy's right, because there isn't enough jobs for our young people. So what we have to do, as I believe, as the older generation, we've got to support the young ones. And we've got to ensure that we don't always, because I know I'm a parent myself, we always want our kids to go and study for a degree, go and do your master's, go and do this. It is not going to be needed in the future anymore. And also vocational training, a university degree does not guarantee you a job. It doesn't guarantee it on the Africa continent. It doesn't guarantee it globally. So what the private sector is looking for is they looking, and as was said by the previous speaker, is that we're looking for youth that we can employ that is ready for work. And how do they become ready for work? Through vocational training. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tiekie, for that submission. Very important. So, Joe, let me come to you. You have, as I mentioned earlier, you've been at UNECA pretty much good part of your life, and you've seen all these things. Let's talk about the issue of, and I wanted to stay on the educational front again, because I haven't heard any of you address that issue. The issue of funding of education on the continent. Now, I don't want to go into the statistics, but you realize that now a lot of the educational policies all across the continent is changing. And so my question is, how do we get things right as far as funding of education on the continent, which is the pivot around which all these issues that we are discussing is concerned. And my question is it time for government to start talking to the private sector and kind of lure them either by way of flexible taxation policies and what have you, for the private sector to become a partner in funding education in Africa? What's your thought on that?
Thank you very much. My view has always been with the private sector is that we always think, or they think, that they have to be consulted. I think it should be the other way around, right? Because the private sector are the beneficiary. What the government has to do is to set up the process or give it a level of playing field that is objective in the sense of coming up with policies and all that. Look, Emmanuel, when we were growing up in Ghana, we used to have something called vacation employment, if you do remember.
I do.
When you have the long vacation, which is 3 months at home, you get attached to a company where you get first-hand learning experience. If you want to be a car mechanic, you can go to Swami in Kumasi, where you become an apprentice, right? Now, I know that these are indigenous ways of trying to solve the problem for the youth. And so I think we should encourage more of the kind of what we say apprentice or something, apprenticeships and all those things, as which I think I was trying to allude to in terms of internships and all that. So that has to come. Now, to your question about whether the funding of education, unfortunately, I think we should be realistic to know that the governments have very tight fiscal space now because of mismanagement in the past. So we have a lot of ballooning debt that we still carry. And as you know, for where you sit in Ghana, Ghana is under an IMF program because of this huge colossal debt. So I think in terms of, we have to be realistic and realize that government is constrained in terms of financing education. So we have to become more creative. Is there a way that the universities, I know when you go into the tertiary education and you go into private education, it has to be a pathway. I know that now Ghana government is paying the first year education for at universities. It doesn't. I don't know whether it includes boarding and all that. But I think we have to revisit that question. Perhaps, maybe if people are entrepreneurial enough, like programs like what you are doing in terms of leadership training, where students, you charge a little bit just to cover your costs. Private sector could begin to look into that process of, educating people in a practical way that prepares them for the job market. But at the same time, they would have to charge to cover their costs, because it's not, for instance, what you do, you have the technology you have got to pay, you have staff which you have to pay, you have other things, people who you have to pay. So there has to be a way that the private sector is allowed a little bit to do that. But that kind of, let's again come back to education. Most people prefer to take their kids to private schools, right? Why? Because they know that they'll get better, they'll be taught well and prepare them well for their future in terms of whether they have to go to a tertiary education or whatever. So in the same way, if we have private universities, which we know, that they can prepare the youth well for the job market, I think people would pay. I know that, but then the government would have to look into ways in which, if it wants to support. But then we have to also realize that the governments, if they come in, they would have to find the money. They would either have to borrow or tax. And if they borrow, they have to find a way to pay for it. So that method of financing would have to be looked into. I'm not saying that the government should not support, but I'm saying that in all practicalities, it is becoming difficult for governments to continue to support education, difficult to support infrastructure. So therefore, you need a new model, a new paradigm to look into that. But I think the most important thing is, again, to tell the youth that as Dr. Ayo said, the era of where government employs as a sole employer is going to dwindle. And so therefore we have to teach our kids, whether it be in a private institution or in a public institution, that they have to become creative. It is nothing. I mean, I think we run around calling ourselves Dr. So and so, Dr. this and that, when you've not even done anything with whatever degree that you have. What we need are the practical people who create jobs and who create the jobs for millions of people. And you asked the question about how many youth. We have about 12 million every year coming out, but there are only 3 million jobs. So 9 million people don't get jobs, and that's why they go into the gig economy, like doing Uber and all that. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's still okay if that supports their income. But we need to begin to look into entrepreneurship as part of our studies. I mean, you get MBAs coming out, but they don't know anything about entrepreneurship, right? And if you take it in, that's why I say indigenous education is important. If you go to our markets, the women are very creative. They don't have the formal education I have, but they are very, very creative. So I think it is important. When I said 12 million, I meant Africa, not Ghana. I'm referring to 12 million youth coming out. We have indigenous education. To me, if you look at the Dangotes of this world, how did they start? We need to study them. They started from the food industry to the cement to our needs. Dangote only business is about the needs of society. You need the cement to build a new home. It goes into the cement. You need food. It's gone into the sugar cane. You need oil. It's into oil. So we have to begin to think about these things, about what are the needs of society. And at the moment, I think the agricultural industry should be one, because we can't feed ourselves. We cannot feed ourselves. So let's look at that and say, young people, look at farming as a business. It's not only for the old people to, and it's become more creative. If you look at the service industry in terms of agriculture in North America, it's about 4% of its GDP, but they are self-sufficient in terms of food. So I think we begin to look into this. And so when Dr. Ayo talks about reforming the educational system, it has to be reformed in a way to ask ourselves, what are our needs? What are the needs of Africa? And then you get people who would think creatively to be able to work on the needs of Africa. And food will be important. Technology will be important. We have to have more people who understand issues of artificial intelligence. As Dr. Tiekie said, these days it's not about the degree that you have. You can ask can go to ChatGPT and ask the questions that you have to have, and you'll be automatically be smarter than me. So this requires a lot of creativity, but I think we can only succeed, and we can only succeed if we look into governance, because young people now say, I want to go into politics because that's where I can get money. That, I think, is sad if we think that way. We go into politics because you have something burning that you want to advance society. You don't go into politics to make money. It shouldn't be the case. Let me stop here.
No, John, you're not going to stop there. I mean, you've raised a very important issue because the question I think we should be asking ourselves, why are the young people saying they want to go into politics? And because that's where they will get the money. What have they seen?
You are a young guy in the village, right? Right? And you know this Mr. X or Madam Y.
Right.
Who you all know that you are struggling, right? He's able to go into politics, and overnight he has 3 homes. He has a number of cars.
Right.
And there's no accountability. There's no transparency. You all know how much this person should maybe be making in parliament. Where is he finding the money from? So until we address the issue of corruption, right? And these days, people have become very clever in terms of corruption. Until you address that, I mean, it becomes lucrative, right? Because they see that you are struggling, and you see Mr. X, who is now become the darling of the community because he's in politics and he has money, and everybody goes to him for school fees. So we have to let people know, and I think the government should begin, publishing the income that they are paid, and people should understand the mindset. You go in to business, you go into politics because you believe that you have a passion, you need the community, needs something, and you want to be the one who to lead. You shouldn't be going there just because of course, you should be paid for what you do and be paid so that you are not tempted to become corrupt. But the idea that, young people feel that, they would have to go and borrow large sums of money to be able to bribe their way into getting nominations for their party, and through that they'll go into politics and make money. I think that is a bit sad, but that is what it is, because electioneering in Africa is not cheap. It's a lot of money that you have to invest, because you have to, instead of selling ideas, you have to bribe people to vote for you. It's an honest discussion that I'm saying. I mean, I think we have to talk about that, because if you see politicians who, overnight are wealthy, I think you've got to ask the question, where is that income coming from?
All right.
And so it becomes obviously a signals.
Okay.
It's signaling that is the most creative place I should go to the young.
So Joe, what you are talking about here takes us into culture, the culture of the political culture we have on the continent. But let's pause there, because I want to go to Dr. Ayo. Dr. Ayo, there's something you have done in South Africa that's of interest to me. You were able to, use your program to empower thousands of young people in South Africa, and for them to go into entrepreneurship. Now, I think it will be of interest for our listeners, our panelists, our audience, to know exactly what you did. So maybe in about, I don't know whether you can summarize it in about 5 or 6 minutes or so. I want you to do that so that other, government officials, there are people from embassies who are on this platform now in Ghana here that have joined to listen to this program. So if you can share what you did in South Africa, I don't know whether your policies allow you to share, it will be of interest, because I have read about it and I was very fascinated. Then number 2, Dr. Ayo, Dr. Attah-Mensah mentioned the agriculture. Now, you have also done a lot of publication on how do we transform agriculture to become a major, not just earner, but a job creation. If you can also share a bit about that for us, that would be appreciated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel, and I think both Dr. Joe and Mrs. Tiekie Barnard have touched a number of areas in terms of the practicality of, making sure we empower our youth. And for instance, the example you mentioned in South Africa, which we started with Youth Action, what they call Entrepreneurship Action Hub. This is a situation where we have a kind of 4-in-1 initiative where we mobilized youth to really come for an intensive 6 months training, and we in different areas of interest. But the main idea is for us to really introduce them to entrepreneurship skills. And in the process of the six months, once you finish your 6 months, it is mandatory for you to go for an internship for about 1 month or so in a company. And there, the idea is for us to really not expose you to the issue of entrepreneurship skill, because when I got to South Africa, then we then realized that many of our small and medium enterprises, about 75% of them die before their 50-year anniversary. And we then realized that the main challenge is that the fundamental of entrepreneurship is lacking in what most of them do. So what we did was to expose them to that 6 months intensive training on entrepreneurship, and again, another 1 month of internship. And at the end of the entire process, what we want is we were able to make sure you get the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. And second, we want you to really learn what it takes in the business world to run a business. So that's the kind of mentorship we did in terms of internship with them. And also, we give you some kind of project that, okay, if you are to kick off this, what is the basic financial resources that are required to do this? Not knowing eventually at the end of the program, that's exactly the kind of what they are going to be given to kick off the process. So what we did is that in that period, we are able to identify each of them in terms of the market and connect them, because we connect them to local market and some of them to even international market. To the extent that after the expiration of that particular first cohort, we realized almost about 5 of them won global awards. So this is something we did. And also we partner with some of the what they call entrepreneurship platforms in South Africa to be able to, some of them, once we train them, after the training, they are linked into the labor market. So these are the kind of things, this is what provided opportunity for us to be able to touch thousands of them. And also for the renewable energy technology technicians that we train in Saratech in Cape Town. The idea is for us to really, again, we mobilize like that. They were subjected to about another 6 months of intensive training and also 3 months of internship, to the extent that the first 2 batches we trained, not before all of them got employed before the training ended. And these are the kind of things we do in terms of knowing the practicality of work and how it is done. So these are the practical things which we put in place, and I'll also identify those people that are within the labor market that will be able to connect them to the available jobs. So these are things which we've been doing. And the beauty of it is for us to ensure that this is done on continuous basis, because once you leave a vacuum, it becomes something difficult to fill. Now, in terms of agricultural transformation, one thing that is very clear is that if you are able to increase the productivity of the agricultural sector, it increases the productivity of the industrial as well as the service sector. In fact, one increase in productivity in agricultural sector led to about 1.2% increase in the productivity of the industrial and manufacturing sector, and another 1.4% increase in productivity in the service sector. So that is the kind of thing in terms of transformation. But you cannot, in Africa, we have been doing agricultural expansion of land rather than what you call expansion of productivity. And that's why we have not been able to meet the average productivity level of Latin America, Asia, and Eastern Europe. So this is where we think we need to really do a lot of things in terms of how do we ensure we modernize agriculture in Africa. Countries like Ethiopia, countries like Morocco, they've done quite well when it comes to the issue of agricultural transformation. Now, what we need to do is that it has to be modernized. No youth will want to go into agriculture with hoes and cutlasses. We have to make sure that precision agriculture is what we are focusing attention on, and we are able to provide the kind of resources, capital that is needed to really drive them, to motivate them to go into this. Now, one thing that is really very important in this approach, agriculture should not be seen as a way of life, but as an entrepreneurship initiative, as a business. So that's the way it should be. And in this regard, we need a lot of things in terms of modernization, in terms of access to input, access to market, access to technology that is required to drive the process, because many African countries have created what they call agricultural corridor, agricultural growth pole. We need to do this because with this, we have a kind of agglomeration of inputs, agglomeration of market, and agglomeration of some of the agri extension services that are needed to really support this youth to really move in the right direction. So we need to do this because for Ayo to have 1 hectare here, for Mrs. Barnard to have 2 hectares there, and for Dr. Joe to have 1 hectare there, that's not the kind of agricultural transformation we're talking about. If you go to Latin America, if you go to Asia, we're talking about a situation where they have almost about 1,000 hectares of land and partitioned to what they call youth, probably 2 to 5 hectares on the basis of their capacity. In that place, the agricultural inputs are there in terms of tractors, in terms of fertilizer that are fully subsidized that can help them to move in the right direction because they need to be capacitated to be able to deliver this. And once this is done, what I know in Africa is that we focus too much attention on what they call on-the-farm productivity. Nobody is talking about post-harvest management. And post-harvest management is where we're having almost about 40% of our products getting bad before it gets to the market. We need to invest heavily into that. And when we talk about agricultural corridors like this, and we're able to have post-harvest management across these corridors, it becomes an opportunity for us. The first thing is for us to save this 40% of agricultural produce being damaged before it gets to the market. That 40% is enough to transform a lot of non-farm agricultural orientation. And the other thing that relates to agricultural transformation, if you have enhanced agricultural productivity without adding values to agricultural inputs, both at what they call the upstream and downstream engagement, which we have calculated to be almost about $3.7 trillion if we effectively utilize it. That is one of the areas we think we need to add a lot of value to in terms of making sure we do not continue to export primary commodities in Africa. Because the more we export primary commodities, we continue to export our jobs to where the values are being added. We export our wealth creation to where the value are being added. And we export our fiscal space for where those values are being added, because that's where the revenue and taxes will be paid before it comes back to us in terms of finished product. So I strongly believe we need to really do this, and we cannot do it without really making sure that we provide the kind of enabling environment for them to be fully engaged in that. And the need for us, again, technology becomes a critical issue in agricultural transformation. And that's why we're talking about precision agriculture, where it helps to really do. And I want to give you one of the examples here that we are doing in Zimbabwe. The traditional grains they have here in Zimbabwe is being destroyed by what they call quelea bots. Once they destroy almost about 40% of it. What we did was to partner with some small-scale enterprises in terms of developing what they call a drone technology that drives away these bots, and then even, congregate them and make sure they are harvested in environmental friendly manner. This is the kind of thing. These are the bots that are destroying our rice and millets in West Africa. Then we have developed a kind of drone technology that help to drive them away and then make sure they do not become a major threat to our agricultural productivity. So these are just a snippet because I know the time is a major constraint. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you very much, Doc. All too soon, our 1 hour is exhausted, very unfortunately. But I think I can promise our audience and that we're going to this fireside dialogue happens every month, and so you can make sure you can block your date. The dates are always announced earlier, and so rest assured that we're going to revisit this subject matter, next month. But Tiekie, I'm coming back to you, and I want you to address I want to pick your mind on this issue of. Dr. Ayo talked about inputs, agricultural machines, and all of that. Dr. Attah-Mensah also talked about reducing corruption, and you see the two are interlinked. Because on our continent, when these things are facilitated by government, most often than not, the equipment ends up in the hands of party favorites. So the question I'm asking, Tiekie, and with your experience, how can we address this particular matter to ensure that the youth are indeed, made interested in agriculture and truly supported so that they can benefit from the after protocol on women and trade, after protocol on women and youth in trade policy. What are your thoughts on that, Tiekie, briefly?
I want to go back, and I think Dr. Ayo was saying that. I think that when we look at the youth, Emmanuel, when we look at the youth, there's an enormous amount of energy there, and that enabling environment that we're talking about is not there for our youth. It definitely isn't there. So for me, the challenge is to take the energy that our youth have and change it into opportunity, because we have to provide the opportunities in that enabling environment, so that and not let it be kept. We don't want our youth to be captured by despair. So for me, when I think about the when we talk about the youth and how can we actually make it happen for them, I think us here and I'm talking about myself because I think I'm the oldest one here, but the older generation, we are the ones actually more so than anybody else. And I just want to put my camera off because I think it's a bit slow. I think that we more so than anybody else have to have a mind shift, Emmanuel, where we actually believe in the capabilities of our youth, because our youth on the Africa continent is streets ahead of any of the other youth on the other continents. Because if you look at technology, and I know I'm going back to the technology that we were talking about. If you look at technology and you look at what Africa has achieved, what our youth have achieved on the Africa continent from a technology perspective, and what has come out of this continent, I think that what we need to do is government needs to create that enabling environment. And I think we spoke about policies. We got to get the policies right from a youth perspective and from an entrepreneurship perspective. We need to get the education right from that perspective, because we are not going to, we've got to get those vocational training and TVET colleges right. We really, really have to, because if the youth can go to a TVET college and after a period of time can step into a work environment, that's what we need on the Africa continent. We don't want people to go to university for 3 years or 6 years and come out of university and cannot walk into a work environment. The solution for the Africa continent is vocational training, because that will help us on the employment challenges that we have. And I think also when you look from the agricultural sector, there has been so much technology being created from an agricultural perspective as well, to try and help our young ones. Because yes, rightfully that Dr. Joseph was saying is the young people don't want to go and farm. Because who wants to go to the old technology? Because, that's what my dad used to do. I don't want to do that. I want to be something that's a lot smarter than that. So we as governments, we as the older generation, we as business leaders, we have to create that enabling environment for our young people. And with technology and the technology advancement that we've made here on the Africa continent, I know in my heart, I actually know that we can get Africa to rise to where we can create the Africa we want. But our youth need the support.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiekie. All too soon, our time is up, unfortunately. So what I'm going to, you realize we didn't talk about migration and brain drain. We didn't talk about technology. We didn't even talk about gender and inclusion. We didn't talk about a number of things. But, we just want to restrict ourselves to the 1 hour period that we have given to ourselves and we've announced to the entire public. So I'm going to ask all of you to, give your concluding remarks, but I'm going to restrict you in terms of your concluding remarks. So I'll start with you, Joe. Now, Joe, if you were to project your mind into the next decade, what kind of bold steps in terms of policies would you want Africa to take now to ensure that its youth are remembered as catalysts for development rather than security threats? And that question will go for all three of you. So, Joe, you can shoot first.
Okay, first of all, let me thank the audience for the time to listen to us. My view is that I think it requires, since we don't have enough time and we couldn't get into everything, I would summarize by saying that we need a very bold vision and a bold shift. We need to transform our education to be fit for purpose, to be able to walk out of education institution and be able to be employable. That means we should train our people to become entrepreneurs. We should train young people to know how to take calculated risk. Risk is important. It's not every time there's certainty in terms of what you do. We should train our youth to understand that they have to find means or ways to address the needs of the society, and it's where the profits are. So agriculture, but not everybody. But we need to invest in science and technology. The STEM is important, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this should be inclusive for women. We have to find a way to create jobs. We have to find a way to create jobs. And this is through small, medium, and enterprises. Jobs could be created by giving more incentives in terms of credit facilities, in terms of assisting the youth to be able to carry their businesses before the 5 years that you hold, and we have to guide them in that. I would say governance, stupid. We have to stop glorifying people, corrupt people. We have to find a way to ensure that our governance system is more transparent and is accountable, that it doesn't become a way that everyone to think that that's the best way to get money or to become rich. We have to use technology to leapfrog. That is, so therefore we need continental digital platforms, fintech, e-commerce. All those things should be interrelated to be able to help. And I think we need to have targets for our youth. I would suggest that we have to have constitutional reforms that gives quotas to the youth to be part of our parliament. It's sad that throughout Africa, you have less than 5% of our youth are in parliament, where decisions which are made would affect them, but they are not part of the decision-making process. And at the end of the day, I would say that if we want to have development, sustainable development for our continent, I think it's high time we look at our youth as our assets, and we should do whatever possible. Governments, private sector, and individuals collectively should do whatever possible to harness the full potential of our youth. That is how we'll get food security. That is how we'll get living standards going up. Then that is how we'll be able to reduce crime, and that is how we'll have peace and security on the continent. So the youth is our linchpin to our development. I thank you, Emmanuel, for inviting me, and I thank the audience for their kind attention.
Very kind of you. Thank you so much. Let me go to Dr. Ayo. Tiekie, I'll make you the last because, you know, in Africa, when the elderly speaks, the game is over. So, Dr. Ayo, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel. I think Dr. Joe has touched on a number of issues in the conclusion. But the way I see it is we must turn the youth budge into the development opportunities for us in Africa. And in this regard, it requires a lot of very strategic and bold actions for us to make this one happen. The first one is for us to ensure that we have a complete overhauling of the educational system, that we don't just use one brush to paint out colors. The first thing is we need to ensure vocational training is key in dealing with those that cannot move to tertiary education. And for those that are in tertiary education, it is mandatory for all of them to know something about financial and digital literacy, irrespective of the course they are doing it at the university. This is really key to set them up to be able to be on their own. And two, the issue of policy. Policy is really very important when we say, okay, we want the youth to be able to really employ themselves through entrepreneurship initiative. Unless you grow the private sector through value chain development, it will be very difficult. And you have to make sure all the impediments to the growth of the private sector, the growth of SME, small-scale enterprises, are addressed. Not only in terms of licensing, registration, access to market, access to finance, and also access to platforms that help them to really be able to operate. We must facilitate ease of doing business. for both small and even large companies to be able to absorb our youth in productive engagement. And also we need to, as a matter of policy, each African country must leverage how can we integrate into our regional and continental trade system. The African Continental Free Trade Area has provided an opportunity for us to really leverage for transformation. And we must, like we did here, last year, we trained about 750 small-scale enterprises to be able to access African Continental Free Trade Area from Zimbabwe. And I think if we do it across all countries, a large number, is going to create a very solid opportunity for that. Now, the other thing is the youth empowerment itself. As has rightly mentioned, we want to be sure that our youth do not just leave school without having the skill they can display in the labor market. One, the issue of internship, we need to really continue to expand the framework of internship program in all African countries. We need to introduce volunteerism so that people can work for free to gain knowledge and experience. And also, I know Dr. Joe, Dr. Emmanuel, and even myself, we went through the National Youth Service schemes in our own time. If you compare the National Youth Service schemes that we benefited in the 80s or late 70s, you realize it's completely different from this. You are subjected to 1 to 2 years of National Youth Service Corps that gives you the kind of experience to stand in the labor market as a youth, not only in terms of employability, but also in terms of working experience. I think this is really very important. We need to rejuvenate the National Youth Service schemes across all African countries so that there is a kind of gap-filling framework for 1 to 2 years. You graduate from university, you don't go into labor market straight, you go straight into the training through this National Service Scheme. This empowers our youth to be able to stand on their own. This is really very important. Like I said, digital technology programs is what all of us must, because that is going to be the future of tomorrow, the skill of tomorrow, the future of work. We must ensure all our youth, they have the knowledge of this. If you see the kind of transformation that our youths are doing through their phone, you know, every youth, irrespective of the level of engagement, has something to offer in the area of digital technology. And we need to expose them to this so that it becomes a lot of opportunity for them to be able to really benefit. If you look at some of our youth that are really, generating income on the basis of being TikTok issue, this is just by using of their phone, is generating what they call legitimate income for them. So these are issues which I think we need to really do. And in conclusion, I just want to underscore the fact that because of the importance of this and making sure our youth become the asset for all the African continents and countries, the UNDP in 2013, we introduced the Youth Connect, where we bring youth of African countries together every year to come and share experiences and learn from each other so that they themselves, solve problems they've been facing through what they call the platform, engaging their peers across all of that country. That's the first thing. And also we have introduced a kind of Timbuktu where we're planning to raise close to about $100 million every year for almost about 10 years. And the intention is for startups so that we can generate new set of unicorns, a small startup that can boast of about 1 billion assets within a period of short time. And finally, we introduced what they call African Young Women Leadership Program in partnership with the African Union, where we ensure that every country will get about 2 candidates that we use. Once they are part of it, once they get it, we send them into international organizations so that we expose them to what it takes to really know what is it to work in the United Nations system, what is it to work in the World Bank, what is it to work in the IMF, what is it to work in even African Union and any other international organizations like that. And I hope this will help in moving some of this transformation to the next level, because we must turn the youth board into what they call development opportunities for Africa. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you, Dr. Ayo. Thank you very much for that submission. Let me go to you, Tiekie. You are the mother of this session, And as you said, you are there as I said earlier, when you speak, everything is over. So please give us your concluding remarks.
I just want to add to what both Dr. Joseph and Dr. Ayo were saying, is that I think there are two solutions for me from an educational perspective on the Africa continent. And I go back to what you said, Dr. Ayo, vocational training. We need to get governments to start supporting vocational training so that we can get our TVET colleges right in order to get our young people into vocational training, because that is what Africa needs. The second thing is we need to start engaging with the private sector, because the private sector can help to get those TVET colleges right. Because if you're from the agricultural sector, what sort of skills do you need? So then look from a private sector perspective and fund that TVET college that specializes in that particular skill. So for me, it's so important. And I think when we look at what the AU did 2 years ago during the Year of Education, they started World Skills Africa. But I think it's something that they need to build further, that the AU need to build further, is World Skills Africa, because it was created, in actual fact, to increase the standard of the TVET colleges on our continent. But I think that it still needs quite a lot of work from that perspective. In closing, I just want to say, we were talking today about, so when we ask catalyst or threat, and I want to say that Africa's youth are not a problem to manage. They are the engine of our transformation. They really are. The real challenge for all of us is whether we as leaders will give them the platform, the skills, and the trust to shape the future we all need. Because that is what our young people need, is support. To build the future we want and to create that Africa we want. And thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to my fellow panelists. And thank you for listening to me, because I believe that Africa is where we're building the global future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiekie. Thank you very much to all of you, Dr. Ayo, Dr. Attah-Mensah, and Tiekie. This has been an incredible session. And for our audience, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africa Future Leaders Institute of Global Affairs, our mandate is very simple: to prepare, equip, and shape the future with our young people so that they become ethical leaders in the foreseeable future. Our core mandate is by 2050, we would have equipped 1,000 of such young, upwardly mobile professionals in each of the 55 nations of our continent by 2050. So programs of this nature are part of the strategy that we are using, and we cannot thank you enough for being part of this. Now, after this program, the link is going to be broadcasted to widely, so please encourage your friends and your colleagues to listen to it so that all of us can help build the future of Africa together. Now, as I said, Fireside Dialogue happens every month. So next month is going to happen, the date will be announced, the theme will be announced, and the panelists that are going to be assembled to discuss the issues are also going to be announced. It's been a pleasure hosting you this afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Daitumi, and I want to urge you, please remember that Africa indeed needs you. So in whichever way you find yourself, please ensure that whatever you are doing, think about legacy, think about footprints. Don't just be short-sighted and think about only yourself. For your information as well, next month, we are starting a program for all under 50s on this continent. We call it Thriving Under 50. If you are somebody below 50 years, if you're a young couple, if you are people within that age bracket and you want to learn how to avoid midlife crisis, how to plan your financial systems and what to develop your business and all of that, please, when it's announced, make sure you sign up and be part of that program. Otherwise, I will say that on behalf of my team, on behalf of the Governing Council and the Management Council of Africa Future Leaders Institute of Global Affairs Africa, It's been an awesome pleasure hosting you. I will look forward to having you on this show again next month. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.